Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.
Welcome to episode 2 of Matty Loves Podcast. I'm Matt DeSimone, your host, and I am joined by Dr. Tom Lucas. In episode 2, we're going to pick up where we left off in episode 1. We're going to discuss a few nuggets of geekdom that affected me creatively and philosophically and psychologically and all kinds of objectlies. Also, I think Tom might give you a few words to live by, so you might want to stick around. Enjoy the episode, and we will be picking up right where I was leaving off last time. We're going to get to the main topic of discussion, and it's one that I felt that was really important, and Tom also feels really important to talk about as just an introductory thing for us here, and that is the philosophical effects of fanboy culture. And a fanboy is another word that I don't really like to use because, it's kind of been in vogue here, for the past 10 years or whatever.
It's marketable.
Right, it absolutely
makes people
is.
money when you use that, so...
But yes, the effects that fanboy culture, what I'm talking about is what we've been talking about this entire time. Your video games, your films, mainly of the horror, action, sci-fi genre. Mm-hmm. I'm a fanboy of Godfather, but, that's a whole different kind of fandom. And also comic books, video games, and any other apparel, anything that is ever, we've seen and has made us think, and not only made us think, but also kind of had an effect on us for the rest of our lives.
Yes. So basically, what do we mean when we say philosophical effects of fanboy culture? We mean on us.
Yes,
like
on us,
personally. We were personally... influenced by something.
I'm sure everybody
what that has been.
Sure, yeah. I'm sure everybody has had, their influences on their lives, whether it be, novels you've read or, stories of all sorts. Mm-hmm. Can touch you in different ways. And I think that, as in this initial podcast, kind of giving you guys an idea of where we're coming from and how we view certain things that have given us reasoning like I'm going to talk about, there are comic books that touched on issues that at the time weren't as glaring, but when you go back now, like Chris Claremont's X-Men, and the whole variety of not only ethnicities but powers, but they're all working together because the world doesn't understand them as mutants,
right?
So they're all kind of together in this one pool. And for me, it kind of made me think. I wasn't even thinking about the mutants. I'm thinking about, well, here are all these different ethnicities, good friends working together for a common goal. That makes sense to me.
Right. Well, they were also united in their it was us versus them kind of scenario. It's like we will let our personal differences go when we have a larger common enemy.
Absolutely.
So when do you come into the game with Claremont's X-Men? Like, were you reading them when they were coming out? No, I didn't think so.
No, I came on. I jumped on to Claremont's X-Men right at the end of his run when it was pretty much one of those. Claremont gets a new hot artist, and he's like, "Hey, what do you like to draw? Give me some characters." Okay, I've written enough X-Men stories to this point to where now I will try to acquiesce to the artist because times are changing here in the late 80s, early 90s, and a lot of people are just looking at comics and not necessarily reading them. So a lot of the Claremont stories that I initially jumped on weren't necessarily the best or the most important in the X-Men lore, but it was my introduction to this large variety of characters. It wasn't until I started working, started making money, to where I was like, okay, I want to go back and I want to get all this shit.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Well, one thing that I think that I don't know if we can get back to this point or not, but a lot of comics writing and a lot of the great comic book writers of the previous eras, the 70s to 80s, I think it starts to shift at the end of the 80s. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really about the individual lines of writing in the book. It was about the overall events or concepts presented in the book. Yeah. The dialogue is often terrible. The transitions can be terrible. The gaps in logic can be terrible. But that doesn't matter because Phoenix sacrificed herself and used her powers.
Because she loves Scott so much.
Because she loves Scott so much. What was in that bubble, that thought bubble, that dialogue balloon, does not matter. Mm-mm. I am wondering if we are more critical now of writing in comics in this era than not. I don't know. But, Claremont, maybe not the best writer ever.
Oh, no, absolutely not. But as far as
events,
oh my God,
lore,
oh man, just managing, like being orderly, and having all these characters and spreading them out, because after the fall of the mutants, they all spread all over the earth, so we had to keep track of all these characters for the next 2 years.
There's a time where the Marvel universe was just a mutant universe, and nobody read Avengers, and nobody read any of that other stuff.
How times have
dominated.
Changed.
Now they're off. They're getting packed on a big cruiser and sent to Mutant Land.
Right, yeah. Or Off-World, or wherever the hell they're going to send them.
The Mutant Planet. So that's pretty solid. I encountered Claremont's X-Men in my youth, and I was not there for the... I didn't pick up issue 100.
Right.
I would say that was... What year was issue 100? Do we know off the top of our head?
Okay, so I own every issue of Uncanny X-Men from the year I was born, which is 1981. Now, I have more issues before that, just sporadically, but if you're trying to get issues I think it's 96, to 110, those are your Claremont Byrne. Yeah. So you're going to be spending a little extra coin on those bad boys. But I want to say that 81 was probably issue 140.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right. So while you're looking it up, but I would say that I got in there fairly early, and I think that it's a great book for a teenager because when you're a teenager, typically you do really feel misunderstood. It's brain chemistry. It's a common thing. I don't judge a teenager for feeling that way.
Yes. 140 was issued December 1980.
Okay.
Oh, it's a great issue, too. That was that the Yeti? Wendigo.
Wendigo.
With Alpha Flight.
Yes, Alpha Flight, which I collected for a while. I enjoyed Alpha Flight a fair bit. Puck.
Yes.
Little Puck and
Sasquatch,
Captain Canada, or whatever
Snowbird.
The heck his name is.
Vindicator.
Vindicator, which is really not a memorable name, I don't think. But wasn't he have a tech suit or something? It was
wasn't he originally the Guardian?
Yeah.
Wasn't that originally what it was? And then his wife, after he died, took over and became the Vindicator or something like that.
Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I get the teen angst that is really what a lot of the X-Men is about: being misunderstood, being categorized, being marginalized, being pushed to the edges of society. I get all that. So I can see how that would be a very strong.
Yeah, but I'm saying, philosophical effects. Understanding stuff about the world. You had a character like North Star, who was a homosexual.
It was like the first one, right?
Yeah, he was like the first one that I had ever read about in a book. And back then, they would allude to it, but they weren't, adamant about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like another one of those things, how, these are all these different people, but it doesn't matter, because they need to save the world by, however they have to. And one of the main things they have to do is get along, or nothing's going to happen.
Right.
But, North Star was eventually, I think, an X-Men, and that's your Alpha Flight, and that was John Byrne, but still, it was around the same time. I still pull that into everything, Alpha Flight, X-Men, during the early 80s.
Still the only Canadian-based superhero group, right?
What, in the Marvel universe?
Yes, in the Marvel
Department
universe.
H, Alpha Flight, from my knowledge, that's the only Canadian-based group. Recently, DC did it was Justice League United, I think, and that was just more or less Justice League Canada.
Okay.
But I only read a few issues of that. But yeah, so the X-Men, they affected me big, and in just the whole, like, just seeing a bunch of people working together that come from all walks.
Yeah.
But an opposite, I guess, of that would be the first time I read Watchmen.
Oh boy. Now, when in your comics life span did you encounter Watchmen?
Okay, so I had known about Watchmen, the myth of this comic book called Watchmen, when I was a little boy, and I didn't, there's no internet or anything, so I couldn't do any real research or anything like that. And I bought the graphic novel for my younger brother one Christmas. I never read it, but my brother, he's a comic book fan, he always has been, and I just kind of wanted to pass on the knowledge a little bit to him, which I would do. I remember one year I gave him like a couple Sandman graphic novels, whatever, but I was passing on knowledge that I hadn't even attained yet. Like, I was giving him something that I hadn't really knew nothing about. I just knew that it was a great story.
You're like, I know this is cool.
Right.
I'm going to give it to him.
Right.
Were you curious at all?
Holy shit, man. When I gave him that, I was probably like 16 years old. So he was like 11. What 11-year-old kid is going to be able to flip through the Watchmen and be like,
there's too much to decode for it all.
Yeah.
Like, how much experience does he have?
And even it might have been a little older than that, but still, if you're not, I'm going to even say, if you're not 21, or if you've not, like, lived your life a little bit, you will not understand Watchmen at all. Plus, if you have no knowledge of American history, don't even bother reading that book.
And comic book history.
Yeah, and comic book history, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not going to solidify as well. But for me, when I read it when I was a janitor.
You were a janitor?
I was a janitor.
Oh my God.
This is what I was doing right before I was like, maybe I should just go ahead and, use my intellect for something other than breaking up pieces of shit in the toilet.
So was this like an existential period?
Yeah.
In your life where you're really examining?
Man, when I was cleaning up, I was 20% cleaning up because honestly, it wasn't really that hard to just hit a corner of an elementary school.
All right.
But it was also the period of time where I bought all the Uncanny X-Men I have. Like I bought all the Uncanny X-Men.
That's where those janitorial funds were going.
Yeah, and I got Watchmen. And when I didn't get Watchmen. I took my brother's copy back, pretty much. What
are brothers for, right?
And I took it to school, and oh my gosh, man! I mean, I couldn't put that thing down. And the thing that was just blowing my mind, it wasn't just the comic book, the traditional comic book, window pane aspect of it all. At the end of every issue, you got prose.
Yeah.
You got to read.
That's the
something.
Alan Moore thing. Like,
right.
Here's a chapter of a story in the middle of your comic book.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so for me, it's never been done as well, and it will never be done as well, in my opinion. And that philosophically was more of from a writer's and a creative perspective.
Sure.
To like, look what you can do.
No, Watchmen is Alan Moore firing on all cylinders. Mm-hmm. He's a younger guy. He's still a part of, the mainstream comics world. He hasn't retreated to his Lovecraftian
Right.
Temple of Horror in rural England. He's still an accessible human being, and he has a great artistic mind. Well, and Watchmen is a really excellent commentary on the superhero genre in comic books, its tropes, the actual medium, the drawn page, use of panels,
Colors,
construction. Dave Gibbons, by far the best choice of artist for that book, because he's taken life drawing classes.
Right.
He has real life proportions, unlike someone else who, Liefeld. But anyway, if there's anything I can do with this podcast, it's to steer people clear of Liefeld's art. I think I've done a great service to society. But anyway,
that's my childhood. Liefeld's my childhood.
So, I know. I was deep in books there too. And the other thing too that really, like, I'm so glad that you mentioned Watchmen, because this is a thing that we can share. I was in high school and I was going to the comic book store every week when Watchmen came out. I was doing my weekly pull stack like you do now. Right. And I'm strictly a trades guy for the most part.
Yeah, I'm a weekly reader, by the way.
I was a weekly reader for a long time, and something we'll talk about in other shows is, in the mid-late 80s, man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came on the scene, and it was black and white, and it was indie, and there was an explosion of independent comics. Everyone gave it a go, and that was where Dark Horse Comics was born, and there's just so many great things going on. So Watchmen was coming out every month, Oh my God. Can you imagine having to wait a month after each chapter of Watchmen?
Of that book? No, because for me, it would be, I wait a month for the book, and I'm going to probably need to go back and just want to read the first issue again before I even get to the second one. And those are issues of Watchmen. It's a 12-issue, series. You can't sit and read that whole thing in like 2 days.
No.
That's hard. I mean,
it's dense.
Yeah.
It is dense, brother. And, there was even I know there was a point, I think there was like a month or two gap, like a pause in production right before the big Rorschach origin book.
Right.
Can you imagine having to wait for that?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was, folks, you can go and pick up a trade of Watchmen right now. I'm so jealous because you could just sit and read it. You don't have to experience the pain that I went through. But like for me, it really transformed how I looked at superhero books. Did it have that effect on you?
And it wasn't superhero books. It was just superheroes in general.
Yeah.
Because
the concept of the superhero.
You never read any flawed superhero stories for the most part. Now, there were some. Tony Stark, that's your flawed. I consider him a flawed superhero.
Spider-Man had his struggles.
Sure, but it was nothing to what we get in here and how they're all connected. You know, it's amazing. It's an amazing book, and we read it a couple months back, and I put it down and was like, I can't do this. There's no way I can. As a writer, there's no way
It's a symphony.
Do this. Yeah,
it's a symphony because there are so many things going on. The construction of the story, all the thematics, all the little nuances, and then, because it's a comic book, what Dave Gibbons is doing with the art. All the panels are interconnected. The geography of the street corner, the characters passing one another on their different little.
It's cinematic. It's so cinematic
ridiculous.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the pushbacks that they do.
And then the pirate stuff. Oh
and
my
that's
God.
a story within a story. That's like parallel to the narrative that's going on in the main Watchmen stories. There's so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why it's considered a masterpiece, and that a masterpiece has that level of complexity.
Yeah.
And at every level of complexity, it is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and I don't give a shit what anybody says as far as calling comic books masterpieces. It's hard to do. there's not a lot of comic books that are masterpieces. There really aren't. At
No.
the end of the day, there are not a lot. And take our advice. If you've never read Watchmen before, I don't care if you've seen the movie and haven't read the book, read the book to better yourself. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all.
No,
I can say about
there are
that.
things that you need to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are things that need to be read.
Right.
To, and it's just one of those things.
Right.
It's just one of those things. It's canonical.
Right. One of my former instructors, friend of ours, Simone Carodi, I talked to him just a couple days ago, and it was kind of like the same thing. He was reading one of the top 10 considered to be most difficult books to read.
What's he reading?
I can't even remember the name of it. But the name of the book itself was just kind of like plain Jane, and then he explained to me, and I was like, whoa.
Okay.
But it's like one of those things, And that,
You must get me the name of that book.
Yeah. There's a list on the internet of a website has the 10 most
Was
difficult
it Ulysses?
books.
Was it James
No, but
Joyce?
that's one of them. No,
yeah.
that's one of them. But no, he had said that, but that was one of them. But,
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get what you're saying with their just books you have to read. Maybe you don't want to read them, but you need to get through them just so you can have a valued opinion on them at least.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's part of it. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably love comics as much as we do,
Right?
Among the other things,
Sure.
And you probably know about Watchmen. Just read it, okay? Just read it. It's it's required.
Do you have any comic books that like affected you?
Oh man.
When you, like the kind of spoke to you?
Well, I want to keep it kind of mainstream, but I will say that when I was in college, I discovered American Splendor and Real Tales by Dennis Eichhorn.
That's a film, right?
They made a film of it. And that's Harvey Pekar, and he did autobiographical comics. He had this crappy little civil clerk job, and he somehow got R. Crumb to illustrate his life. And it was independently published and very indie, totally,
no
different.
superheroes.
No superhero, none of that. This is a guy talking about his life as a clerk in Cleveland and drinking, and it's kind of Bukowski. And if you don't know who R. Crumb is, he's the biggest counterculture comic book artist in the 60s. The Keep On Truckin' logo, he drew that.
Oh, okay.
And R. Crumb, Fritz the Cat, which you can catch on Netflix.
Really?
Yeah.
Fritz is on Netflix?
Yeah, the Bashki, Fritz the Cat.
Wow.
So R. Crumb is the counterculture, hippie comics, sexy comics, kind of guy. So that was... Why was that influential? Because here was a medium that I thought was really only used for telling certain kinds of stories. Superhero, horror, maybe sci-fi, and funny.
Right.
Funny stuff. And whoa, here's somebody who's writing really interesting, creative nonfiction. And the art is really suitable and interesting. I've had a lot of wild things happen in my life. I don't know if I know exactly how to break it down into sequential art to be that riveting. So I would say that,
right.
Was really influential. I agree with you. Watchmen was a great influence on me. And then also, just sticking with this, a lot of the people that are working in comics today were influenced by the same people that influenced me as a reader. They're just creating. 2000 AD, which is the periodical, basically a comics newspaper in England, in the UK, they gave birth to characters like Judge Dredd, which is now a known entity in the U.S., but in the 80s probably was not so much. All those UK writers and artists that worked on 2000 AD eventually came over to work in American comics. Garth Ennis, Warren Ellis, Alan Moore, Steve Dillon, Brian Boland, Kevin Grant, Pat O'Neill, Kevin O'Grant, Marshall Law, those guys were doing something that was not American at all with comics, and ended up becoming the beating heart of American comics, because DC was rocking in the late 80s, making the right decisions. They're like, every book is going to look and feel different. We are going to take chances on writers.
We're going to reboot everything, and it's going to work.
Yes. We're going to do all that stuff. Whereas Marvel seemed really stuck in house style. Every book kind of looked and felt the same. But they had a ABC method that everybody had to do their shit on, right? Yeah. The Marvel method. Yeah, the Marvel method. Right. And DC, that's when Vertigo starts. Mm-hmm. So that's a big influence too, man. Yeah. It's just, it was the influx of all those English guys. Any specific characters that you kind of, I don't know, maybe saw a little bit of you in, or maybe a characters that, man, God, I wish I could be that guy, that's pretty funny. Because I know you're a big Dreadhead. Yeah. But at the same time, you don't want to be Judge Dredd. You don't want to be Judge Dredd, right, exactly. I mean, for one, you just don't want, I would not want to live in Mega City 1. Right. No, thank you. Okay. No, thank you. It's going to come out totally left field. So, I picked up and read every issue of the Perez Teen Titans back in the day. Oh, man. And there's two things that came out of that. One, I really loved Kid Flash, Wally West. Okay? Wally West, who's now the Flash, right? Or is he? Whatever. DC's a lot different than it was back then. I know, right? Barry Allen is the current Flash in the continuity. Wally West exists, though, but it's a completely different Wally West. It's like Blue Lantern Flash. In my opinion, that's what it feels like. Okay, anyway. So Wally West in the Perez Teen Titans, right? Very straightforward, Kid Flash. Yeah. Yellow costume. Had the hair flying. When I was a kid and I was reading Teen Titans, it was because those characters were young. You could readily identify with being with them in the battles. And Kid Flash was always my favorite Titan. And, I kind of wanted to be him. Yeah. I love the idea of being, super fast and doing all that. Right. But the character that comes out of the Teen Titans that I truly love more than anything else is Slade Wilson. Oh, I knew you were going to say that. I for a second I was like, is he going to say Robin or what? No. Okay. Oh, well, when he became Nightwing and George Perez gave him that huge pop collar in the crazy disco V, the deep It looked like a bunch of buttons across his shoulders. Go real quick if you guys have never seen Nightwing, his original costume, Google that. It is atrocious. It's so Perez. His domino mask was killer, but everything else was straight garbage. Oh my God. Oh, it's so, but at the time it was a huge reveal, dude. Don't get us wrong. It's iconic as shit. That costume is iconic as hell. But, maybe not one of George Perez's best ideas. Right. And it's a huge reveal, though. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The introduction of Nightwing into the continuity, Yeah. The final shedding of Robin and becoming Batman. He's a man now. What was the argument? What was the problem that Dick and Bruce had that caused Dick Grayson to finally be, or was it one of those things where he was just like, I need to be out on my own? He needs to be out on his own, because the thing is you can only be mentored by Batman for so long before you going crazy. Yeah, before you're like, he is a detective too. Yeah, he taught him, and so one of the, Robin or Nightwing has no superpowers. Nope, and he also doesn't have the budget of Bruce Wayne. Or even that level of technology. He is the Daredevil with the Vision, Pretty much. Wow. I've never really thought about that. But Nightwing in DC is pretty much DC's version of Daredevil. He even has the sticks. Without the heightened senses. Wow. Yeah, I never really thought about that. But he has a greater detective mind, I think, than Matt Murphy. Although Matt Murphy's pretty good at sniffing clues. Yeah. Do you think he's more analytical? Do you think that they'd make a good team? Nightwing and Daredevil?
Matt Murdock.
Yeah, Matt Murdock.
I mean, if they were like, we're doing a Daredevil Nightwing crossover, I would be all over it. Just
versus
because
the Hand, them beating up ninjas for 80 pages
in Bloodhaven.
Yeah. Oh god. Right.
Like,
so, but Deathstroke.
Yeah, you're right. Gosh, so you totally just like blew my brains out.
I can see some stuff coming out of your ears there. So. And the thing is I really just made that connection myself. So
that's great.
But
that's
so
what
anyway,
we're here for.
Right? Exactly. Deathstroke, man. These characters that are commonplace now, when you're reading a book today and a new character's introduced, try and if you're impressed with it, you may be just participating in history. Deathstroke comes out of Teen Titans. He was their big villain, right?
Yep.
And he's based, and for those of you, most people know that Deadpool is just a parody, a satire of Deathstroke. So, Wade Wilson, Slade Wilson, it's not really, all that far stretched. But anyway, I thought Deathstroke was a badass, and minus the losing an eye thing, I thought it would be pretty cool to be Deathstroke.
Well, I mean, just visually, like, alone, super badass,
right? Yeah.
You got the scale outfit. He has a little bit of like all the cool shit comic book characters have in
the
there.
Flare Captain America boots.
The Spider-Man eye.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that's what it always looked like. But the mask in itself was totally badass.
Right. And he goes into combat with like a sword and.
But he's fighting kids.
Yeah.
That's the best thing about it. It's like it looks like this middle-aged man, and he's like, "You stupid teenage bastards."
Yes. It's sort of the Scooby-Doo effect, right?
Yeah, sure,
so,
for sure.
That's funny. So what next on your list of influences?
Well, if we're going away from comic books, for me, as far as like fanboy type stuff, I want to just touch on music. Because, and the only reason I say that music will tie into this is because my favorite band as a little kid was Kiss.
Nice.
And I was down with Kiss probably about like 15 years after everybody else on planet Earth was down with Kiss. So I missed the boat. And had I been a fan of Kiss in 1978 and I was 21 years old at that point, I probably would not have given them another spin. Just because knowing me, and I'm like, what? Ace and Peter are gone? It's not the same. What are these new guys you got?
Yeah, I don't know how you even have anyone but the original roster.
Well,
but you do.
And for me, I really, personally, I love the 80s Kiss shit. More than the mask or the makeup stuff. Yeah. I love the hair metal Kiss stuff.
Okay, well, on.
The Lick It Up, the Asylum, and all that stuff. But one of the first songs that ever had an effect on me, and what they, because I wasn't really full on. I knew Kiss just loved to have a good time, and they sing about partying and rocking and rolling.
Yeah, it's not challenging,
right? And they had this one song off of Rock and Roll Over called "Take Me." Well, I figured this song, for the longest time was just about take me as your boyfriend, let me be your man, but what he's talking about is just, it was like when I really figured out what it was about was, like, okay, so like, Kiss, they cut the bullshit with like most of their like writing. This is very simple. They weren't trying to blow anybody's minds, lyrically or whatever. And they made it no bones about the fact that they just wanted to rock and party all the time. So of course, to me, when I was 15 years old, I thought, well, wow, that just sounds to me like the most awesome thing in the world. Dress up like superheroes, play music, and get laid all the time or whatever, just be a total, rock stars. Well, the song Take Me has a lyric in it. And when I first heard it, I was like, oh, okay.
I'm intrigued.
The lyric is, sitting in the back, which I'm guessing he's talking about a car. Sitting in the back with her head down in my lap. Now, when I'm a kid, I'm just thinking, Dad's driving him home. You know, and she's tired, and you know, and they're cruising on back to drop her off or whatever.
Yeah, but this is
I'm
kids.
15.
Yeah,
I'm 15 years old here.
Okay,
you know?
well,
none of this crazy shit.
You
was
were a
going
very
on with me.
sweet, 15-year-old kid. Clearly not warped by society.
I had great parents, man. What
Good.
can I say?
That's nice. Man.
But
Nothing wrong with that.
Anyway, so the lyric goes: sitting in the back with her head down in my lap, moonlight shining down on her head, radio is playing, fingertips are spraying. Mama didn't know she was there.
Okay.
Then I was like, wait a minute. They're not getting a ride back home from Dad or whatever. They're in the back of his car. And her head is in his lap, but not necessarily resting, so to speak.
It's visiting.
And that was like, bong! Wait a minute. Now I'm figuring out what exactly you can do with songs, like lyrically, to not just be like, not be profound or whatever, but to allude to what's going on instead of what was going on, you know? Well,
you know, and that, here's the thing, just to interrupt. Okay, so there have always been explicit lyrics, you know, for the most part.
Yeah.
And we're in an era now where most lyrics are straight up explicit.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, the thing is, the songs have always been about sex and drugs and partying and doing all that stuff.
Bill Hicks, man. Yeah. Bill Hicks.
Content has never changed. However, people used to be more clever about it.
Right. And Kiss was so clever, man.
You know, the only okay, I can't say the only, but, you know, Eminem, lyrically, clever.
Absolutely.
You know, does he say a lot of things explicitly? Yes, but he also uses a lot of analogy, a lot of metaphor, things like that. So this isn't me being an old guy saying things used to be better.
Right.
But as a writer, is it, you know, I appreciate when someone can say something without saying it directly. That's the poetry of writing a great lyric.
Exactly, and it kind of hurt me a little bit as a fan of Kiss. You know, even though I love the album so much, but when I was a little boy and I initially heard, I think it was Animalize, and that was the first album that Paul drops the F-bomb on, if I'm not mistaken, and I heard him say, I was like, oh.
You're like, what?
Right, but for me, I didn't realize, like, the like, history of Kiss and thinking, not knowing that people thought they, like, worshipped the devil back in the day and all this other stuff, you know? And so, like, I'm getting upset about that, not knowing that when I'm telling, like, adults, yeah, Kiss is my favorite band, and they're like, how old are you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the big deal? They're superheroes in costumes playing music about rocking and rolling, you know?
It's a good thing Guar wasn't around when you were a kid, right?
Well, yeah. Well, no, Guar, I mean, I'm listening to Meat Sandwich when I was, you know, a teenager or whatever. And Guar's from Richmond, Virginia.
I know.
So
they were. Did you used to see him walking around?
Didn't see it. Well, Richmond's about 4 hours from where I grew up.
Oh, okay.
But Guar came through my hometown a few times, and they, you know, were always playing in their hometown.
I hung out with them a couple of times. That's a story for another podcast. Really great people, and it's. He died. Odorous died.
Yes.
You know, a year or two ago. It's still quite a bummer. But anyway, can I jump in on this topic real quick?
Absolutely, man. Sure.
So, what my influence was not so much a particular lyric or moment of epiphany like that, but I think like many kids, when I was in elementary school, I loved pop music. I used to listen to Casey Kasem's Top 40 on Sundays.
And on with the count.
You know, yeah. And, you know, keep your feet on the ground and reach for the stars.
Yeah.
Right? Here's a long-distance dedication.
Yeah, as a request and dedication.
That's not bad. That's not bad, man. Okay. So there really hasn't been cause to imitate or do an impression of Casey Kasem at some time, right? But
sure.
Anyway, so I was on that path that most people are.
Right.
They're gonna grow up. They're gonna listen to pop music. They're gonna, you know, and that's the thing. And then one day I'm walking home and I kick something, and I look down, and it is a cassette tape, and it is Sex Pistols, Never Mind the Bollocks.
Oh my God.
Laying on the ground, like dropped from heaven to keep me to get me on the right path.
Wow.
Right? And what is this?
What?
Now, I grew up in a house where, I lived with my mom, I lived with my dad, I lived with both at different times because they were divorced, but they both had excellent taste in music. I grew up listening to rock and roll. My dad loved Rolling Stones, he loved Pink Floyd, loved Bruce Springsteen, Beatles to an extent,
Sure,
Elvis to an extent. So, it wasn't like I was just strictly, growing up with pop music. My mother liked REO Speedwagon, ELO, a bunch of disco stuff. Anyway, and what was this? And I put it on, hair just blown back. Like, whoa, I need as much of this as possible. This is a whole world I need to explore, And I was never one of those guys who got so deep into the scene that like I was in 80 bands and hanging out in all the places. For a good chunk of the time that I listened to punk rock, I didn't have a car. And my punk rock experience was buying fanzines and records at the store and wondering what it would be like to be at a show.
Right.
I wasn't, living in the scene, living the life, squatting in a flat kind of punk rock thing. Mine was, a fringe. So was I a punk rocker? Truly, I don't think I can lay claim to that because I know people who have truly lived the life. But DIY, sticking it to the man, rebellion, millennials. Where is your punk rock?
Yeah.
There's twice as many of you as us. Where is your revolt? Give it to me.
This is not us cracking on you kids either.
Give it to me, man. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I am with you, man. As a teacher, I've had the pleasure, and I mean that sincerely, of working with a lot of millennials, right? I've seen some cool stuff happen in the classroom. I've seen greater tolerance and embracing of, sexual identity and differences and all that stuff. And you're such a huge generation, punk rock, man, we came in and we did some stuff. And I put it to you, bring it on. So that was a big influential thing.
Yeah, that
for
was
me.
Have you ever listened to the band Sparrer?
Oh my God, I love them, man.
Yeah,
that's like, it's not Oi. There's another name for what their music is called, but it is that British street stuff, man. It's sing-songy and anthemic.
But there's also that clashy element to them.
You know what I'm Clash saying? Comes.
Yeah.
I love all that stuff. Sham 69, do you know those guys?
No,
You love Sparrer, Sham 69.
Right on.
Well, you need to listen to that right after this podcast. So get into Oi, man. Get back to the 70s.
Yeah. If there's anything that, any of you guys, we've just named a few bands that, you might need to just play back and check out. Maybe check out some interviews with some of these individuals too, because I'm sure any Johnny Rotten interview is going to be interesting as hell, and as well as the what is the word I'm looking for? Pompous nature of Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons?
Oh, yeah, there's a pomposity. By the way, they have a restaurant over in Oviedo now.
Rockin' Brews.
I hear it sucks.
There's nothing...
I hear it's, terrible.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of Paul Stanley posing in random Rockin' Brews, and, you get the somehow pouring a beer, giving the thumbs up at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's just, I guess, leave them with their musical legacy. I think, Planet Hollywood did its thing, and hard rock has, can we stop trying to, do this? So sort of syndicate. Nice. So I see on screen you have notes about Back to the Future.
I do.
So
That's the last thing I wanted to touch on here with the effects. Back to the Future, as far as the film goes, there's a lot of films that have affected me on a philosophical level. The Karate Kid. Never put passion before principle. Even if you win, you still lose.
Right.
Miyagi, the Miyagi-isms in the first two Karate Kid films, even the third one, they're just so well written. I love one of my favorite characters of all time in any film. But going back to, you were saying, I want to be Kid Flash. When I was a little boy, I wanted to be Michael J. Fox.
Sure, of course,
he
man.
he was like, I want to grow up and be just like him because he seems like he's got his shit together, nice kid, all this other stuff.
Successful and nice.
Right,
Stop it.
exactly, and he is.
Yes.
At the end of the day. And so Back to the Future introduced me to having fun with time. Period. What you can do with time in a story.
Yeah.
And since that period of time, as far as doing like any type of like backtracking or forward thinking about anything, I always kind of put it into the perspective of, well, if I had a flux capacitor, how could I solve all of this?
Right on.
And Back to the Future in no way isn't in my top 5 films of all time. Definite top 20 for sure.
But in terms of influence,
the theories,
right, yeah.
the theories have stuck with me forever, man. They've just stayed with me. Just the overall,
Where when your time machine starts working, what's your first trip?
Oh man.
Yeah, I know you've thought about this.
Yeah,
I know you have thought about this.
This is gonna
kill Hitler.
No, it's not even gonna be like that. I think for me, if I could go back in time, I think I would go back to the night my mom and dad found out that they were pregnant with me. And I could
so
go
you
back
could point at them and laugh?
No, so I could be like, guys, you guys are going to do an awesome.
Oh my God.
Like
that's nice.
As far as
that is, I like
as
that.
far as like not taking, like not, selfish, non-selfish reasons or selfish reasons, that would be my first thing. I have this picture of my mom and dad. It's up in my apartment. I've had it forever. And it's the picture, it was taken of mom and dad when the night they found out that mom was pregnant.
Wait, you have a picture?
I have a picture.
Wow.
Yeah, so
okay.
I know just looking at that picture my whole life,
And they gave you this picture and told you,
yeah,
this is what we were thinking about?
Well, this picture happened to be taken the night that we found out.
Wow.
Exactly. So for me, that I would want to go back in time and do that. Now, if I could go back for selfish reasons, I don't know if I want to go more towards historical or geeky.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going historical, God, I would have loved to spend a day out with like Thomas Jefferson.
Okay. Sure.
Like a day in office with Thomas Jefferson and walk around with him and whatnot and just pick his brain, knowing what I know now and tell him at the start of the day, all right, listen, you're not going to believe me right now, but at the end of the day today, I'm going to blow your mind. Okay? And then I'm going to show you, currency. Right. Our currency now, and you're really going to think it's something else, man. Right. Wait till you see our nickel. What's a nickel?
Yeah, right, right.
So
that's fun.
Yeah. So anyway, and Thomas Jefferson's my favorite president.
Right.
For different reasons. I mean, he's from Virginia, the state with the most presidents, by the way.
Right, yes, the president factory.
The presidential state. The president's state, as it can be called. Yeah, the last was Woodrow Wilson. But, that seven in total.
Wow, man. It's like University of Michigan with quarterbacks.
Right. And also, too, you also got to think, Virginia was like the only established place when they were first doing presidents.
Yeah, right. So
it's likely you're going to be from Virginia.
Well, early adopter,
Yeah, exactly.
So, has its privileges.
Sure. So, I think if I was going to go back for non-selfish reasons,
okay,
it would be to chill with Thomas Jefferson, or go back when Action Comics 38 was released, and just grab it for 5 cents.
I'd buy $1 worth.
No doubt, I will take this whole box, please. Right. Yeah, that is your sports almanac.
And then you do like what De Beers does with diamonds, just basically not let anyone know that you have a long box of them, and it's once a year release one out.
Where are all these coming from?
Right, yeah,
they're pristine.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so definitely.
You would get rich, but also you would bring joy to someone's life at the same time. So that's a pretty nice little flip on it. And I kudos to you for your first wish. That is very sweet, and your folks sound great.
They're awesome.
And I wouldn't be sitting here with you if you were a jerk. So, I can confirm that you guys did well. So kudos to that. So,
what would you go back and change?
Well, being that I'm having back surgery in a week and a half, that fall off the roof 20 years ago is definitely taken care of. Right?
Yeah.
We definitely keep that from happening. And then also, the other thing that you had said, I shared this a while ago. When my dad was my age, he had a 23-year-old son. Okay, so that blows my mind when I think about that. And I would like to go back and meet my dad at 45 and spend the day with him,
right?
And just see like what he was going through, what he was feeling, because one of the things is, we had a rough ride as I was coming up, and the thing that I have come to learn is that I had young parents. They're 19 and 21 when I was born. They're people, and they made youthful mistakes. They made mistakes just like I would if I had a kid when they did. Mm-hmm. And I don't hold them to any of that.
Sure.
How could you?
No way.
So like my dad, he made more than a pocket full of mistakes with me, with life and stuff, because he was a human being on the planet, and that's what we do. So I would love to, spend the day with him and see what was going on.
See where you come from, literally.
Yeah.
Like where you came from.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that to me just always, it's always been a fascinating thing. I mean, as you're a kid, you really do think you know enough.
Oh yeah, and the thing is too is like parents are infallible, because they're supposed to do everything right every time, and when they don't, you flip out constantly. My dad's been gone for 5 years, so I can't even pick his brain about what his 40s were like because. So that's why I want the time machine too, so I get to spend another day with him. So solid stuff, man.
Yeah, man. So I mean, as far as the main topics go, it's but that's gonna lead us to our final segment.
I guess we can transition
That's probably the most solid transition we've had thus far. At the end of the podcast, when we release, I don't know if it's going to be weekly or every other week, but whenever we do get this out, I will be presenting you Tom Lucas's words to live by.
Yes.
Out there in the atmosphere, the elders often question why. Sit back and be well, my friends. It's Tom's words to live by.
Words to live by. And because we're talking about our fantastic parents, I'm gonna borrow a lot from my dad. He was really good with the sort of the little one-line words to live by, little epigrams, little motivational poster kind of whatnot. But it did have his particular flavor, and we'll start with a family-friendly one, which was my father. Baseball was a religion to him. He knew everything about baseball history, the game, how it's played, why it's played. What
a town to grow up with
right?
baseball.
Yeah, Detroit Tigers, sure, man. One of the oldest franchises, and Tiger Stadium until, whatever it was, 10, 12 years ago, was finally torn down.
I don't know if we mentioned this, but Tom is a native of Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah. And my dad loved his Tigers. He loves the Cubs, too. So he used a lot of examples from baseball for life. And so one of his favorite things he would always say is, remember that baseball is the only game where the defense puts the ball into play. Okay, so the team that's out in the field is the defense in baseball. The offense is the batter, right? So single player offense at any given time until you get players on base, right? So the defense is determining how the play is going to go. Now, when we go through life, typically life throws what it's going to throw at us, and we respond or react. And if we were, thoughtful, maybe we prepared for certain things in advance. But most of the time, we have to, swing the bat at what is thrown at us. And so basically what he was saying was that, when you go through life, you put things into play. Don't let things, be thrown at you. So be like the pitcher in baseball. You determine how things go by putting the effort out there. And I honestly didn't get what he was saying by saying that to me for the longest time. So thanks, Dad.
Right on.
I'm trying to practice most of your principles. Not all of them, but most of them.
Well, awesome, man. Well, that is Tom's words to live by for this week. And that pretty much wraps us up here for Matty Loves Podcast.
Hey, this is history right here. So, let's just enjoy it. The future episodes will be a little bit more compatible with your busy schedules.
Sure, absolutely. It'll be the initial ideas for this just to be the perfect thing to listen to while you're going to point A and to point B and then back to point A again.
Right.
So enjoy us on the next drive time. When we will be giving the hips of the Bee Gees and
I feel like I need the sound effects machine right here.
Right.
So
well, thank you, Tom, so much.
Thank you, Matt.
This was fun.
All right, so I think that's about it. So we're gonna go ahead and click off for now.
Yeah. So you guys be well, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.